no more subject to the liars. Submit to Yah, the only way he'll unite us. Yah's way is holy, true judgment, and he righteous. We can't front on Yah, not even in the slightest. Sons of Belial be faking like they like us, but Yah gave us all to our heart's desires. He'll cut you off for spreading hate like a virus. So turn to Yah, he is torn as he will bind us. He is smited and he will heal us. After 2 days, yeah, he will revive us. In the 3rd day, in his sight, we will rise up. Let's go.
Gather our saints together, bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice Yah's life. Gather our saints together, bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice Yah's life.
Gather together, all nation not desires. Before the decree, go forth and Yah bringing his fire. Seek Yahweh, seek meekness, do his judgments, walk in righteousness, learn Yah's path, he will lighten it. While we fighting this, we the same blood, have the same Ima, and the same Abba. We all are slaves, live the same drama. My people, we be true brethren. 400 years have we learned a lesson, how good and pleasant if we dwell together. Yeah, 2 is better, 3 is hardly broken, and millions live forever. The enemy wanna cut us off to be a nation, never, but the shackles are severed. Soon we'll be one nation with one king, one law, all serving one Elohim.
Gather our saints together, bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice Yah's life. Gather our saints together, bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice Yah's life.
Gather together, all nation not desire. Gather together, let's gather together. Come on, gather together, all nation not desire. Gather together, let's gather together. Let's go. Gather together, all nation not desire. Gather together, let's gather together. Come on, gather together, all nation not desire. Gather together, let's gather together. Let's go.
Gather our saints together, bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice Yah's life. Gather our saints together, bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice Yah's life.
Yeah, praise Yah. Let's get together.
Shalom, shalom, shalom. Praise the mighty Yah. Welcome to another beautiful broadcast of Gather Yah Saints Together. I am Moreh YisraEL from the House of YisraEL of Philadelphia, here to bring you Gather Yah Saints Together. And we're live from the House of YisraEL of Philadelphia to teach you the word of Yahweh. And who is this Yahweh? Yahweh is the creator of the heaven, earth, and sea, and all that therein is. Yahweh is the only judge, the only lawgiver, the only king, and the only redeemer, and the only savior of YisraEL and the world. And Yahweh is the one that has blessed us to be able to come before you this night, so that we may teach the word of Yahweh, so that we may do our part to gather ourselves together. And this is Gather Yah Saints Together from the House of Israel of Philadelphia. And we'd like to say shalom to everyone that is tuned into our program, because we know the only reason you have tuned in is because of your great fear and your great love towards the mighty Yah. And at any time, if anyone wants to call into our program, the number is 667-776-9394. That's 667-776-9394. And I generally take questions and comments in the last 20 to 15 minutes of the show. But if you have any questions that you would like answered, you can also post them in our chat boxes if you're listening on YouTube, or if you're listening on Facebook, or if you're also listening by way of our radio, Live 365 radio station, HOY Radio. You can also call in at 667-776-9394 if you have any questions or comments at all. And this is our second broadcast. We come on every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to teach the word of Yahweh on our program, Gather YAH Saints Together. And the point and the purpose of our program is so that we may come together to be Yahweh's servants, to serve Yahweh with one heart, with one way, one consent, to be one with Yah, one with each other, because Yah said we will be one nation. And so this is the point and the purpose of our program, to gather YAH's saints together. If you look in the book of Psalms, the 50th chapter, it says in verse 5, gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. And the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for Elohim is judge himself, Salah. Hear, O my people, and I will speak, O YisraEL, and I will testify against you. I am Elohim, even thy Elohim. So we come to teach the word of the Almighty so that we may gather ourselves together. In Psalms 34 and 3, it reads, "O magnify Yahweh with me, and let us exalt his name together." Praise the mighty Yah. And that's what we will do. Exalt the mighty Yah's name together. So another announcement to make is next week on our podcast at 7 p.m., we'll have a special guest next week on our podcast at 7 p.m. right here on Gather YAH Saints Together. We'll have a special guest who goes by the name of the Mighty Hebrew. He's a teacher in YisraEL, and he's also in East Africa, Tanzania. And he's been over there for a minute now, teaching the word of the Almighty, gathering himself with the Hebrews in East Africa. And we're going to have him on our program next week, and he's going to tell us about the Hebrews in East Africa. How can we gather ourselves together with our brothers and sisters abroad in places like he is right now, Tanzania, East Africa, right by Mount Kilimanjaro, right by the Nile River? And did you know that our land extends from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates? Yes, let me show you this in the book of Genesis. People think that the land of YisraEL is this little state that they've carved out for themselves today you see the Israelis, or what you call the state of Israel. And it's this small piece of land, probably no bigger than Manhattan or Long Island. This small piece of land. And Yahweh said, our land is a great and large land. Look in Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 18th verse, it reads, in the same day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites. That's Canaanites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaims, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. 10 different nations. And these 10 nations extend from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Now, if you look on a map today and you tell me what's the river of Egypt, everyone knows what the river of Egypt is. It's the Nile River. That's what they call it today, the Nile River. Well, what if our land is from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates? Then where's our land at today? What is this place that our people are identifying with today because some United Nations, some British government has said, oh, Israel is this place that's a small place. And they're fighting over that. Now, our land is from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. And that means part of East Africa, which you know is East Africa, part of that is our land. More than you know, according to the scriptures. And our brother, the mighty Hebrew, he's in Tanzania, which is in East Africa, by the Nile River, and he's going to give us a report on how we can even gather with our brothers and sisters even abroad, because we have to be thinking worldwide if we're going to gather ourselves together. Now, I know many people today are not interested, especially today, in hearing about the word of Yahweh. And why especially today? Because today is a double whammy for the idolaters. Today, it's their Sunday worship day where they go to church. And it's also their folly day. And you know the name of the folly day that today is. But ask yourself, is this something that people should be following after? Is this how we should gather ourselves together, by coming together during the folly days of our enemies? Is this when we should gather ourselves together? Or should we gather ourselves together on the times that Yahweh said we are to gather together? Well, if you say the times that Yahweh said we're to gather together, then you're absolutely correct. Because the times that Yahweh said gather together are the right times to come together. And let's see one of the times Yahweh told us to gather together. If you go to the book of Zephaniah or Zephaniah, in the book of Zephaniah, the 2nd chapter, we're going to see a time that Yah told us to gather ourselves together. It says in verse 1, gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired, before the decree brings forth, before the day passes as the chaff, before the fierce anger of Yahweh comes upon you, before the day of Yahweh's anger comes upon you. So what time is this? Well, some people don't know that you're not under the fierce anger of Yah. You're not under the day of Yahweh. Let me show you what the day of Yahweh will look like. If you go to the book of Yoel, we're going to go to the 2nd chapter. You're going to see what the day of Yahweh looks like. In the 2nd chapter, we'll start at verse 31. This is what the day of Yah looks like. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. And it shall come to pass, whosoever shall call upon the name of Yah shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yahweh has said, and in the remnant whom Yahweh shall call. So the day of Yahweh, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will turn to blood. That's the day of Yahweh. That is not a mistaken time. And Yahweh said, gather yourselves together before the day of Yah. So we still have time to gather ourselves together. It's not too late. And again, what's holding us back from gathering ourselves together? We don't have to wait for a folly day like this Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's in the heathen's world to come together, but we should come together at the times that Yahweh said. And of course, you would have to know the time. Look in the book of Psalms 90, verse 12, and it reads, Psalms 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Yes, because this is a wise thing when you number your days. You can apply your heart unto wisdom, and you can look wise by gathering yourself together at the right time that the Almighty said you should, because you would know the time. And how can you know the time? By knowing what thus saith Yah. He'll show you when you should gather together. Let me show you another time to gather together. In the book of Exodus, the 34th chapter, here's a time to gather together. And that's what we promote here at the House of YisraEL, here in Philadelphia. We have a ministry called the Hebrew Gathering Ministry. We are part of the organization, the World Ingathering of the Children of YisraEL. This is our purpose, to come together. And in Exodus, the 31st chapter, this is a gathering called by Yahweh, not by your slave masters, your taskmasters, your oppressors, but by the Almighty himself. In Exodus 31, verse 12, it reads, "And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak thou also unto the children of Yisrael, saying, Truly my Sabbaths shall you keep, for it is a sign between me and thee throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yahweh that doth sanctify you." So the Sabbath day is a day to come together. You say, well, that didn't say nothing about coming together. It just say keep the Sabbath. You're right. Let's go to Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. But you did see in that verse, Yahweh said, it's a sign. The Sabbath is a sign, so that you may know that it is Yahweh that does sanctify you, the fountain of living waters, the creator of all things, the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He is the one that sanctifies you. And in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, the first verse, it reads, "And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, concerning the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, holy gatherings." And that's what a convocation is, a holy gathering. "Even these are my feasts." Verse 3, 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Shabbat, the Sabbath, the rest of rest. Yes, it's the Sabbath of rest, a ceasing of ceasing, a holy convocation. "Thou shalt do no work therein." It is a Sabbath. It is the Sabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings, meaning in every place in which you reside. You are to keep the Sabbath day holy, sanctify it, set it apart. It's a sign between Yahweh and his people, and we're to have a holy convocation every Shabbat day. Come together as a family, worship the Almighty. Nowhere in these scriptures will you see it say worship the birth of the Christ. But in the New Testament, that's exactly what they're doing. They're talking about people coming to worship some baby born because they saw his star in the east. And where does Yahweh tell us to follow stars and worship babies born because of some star in the east? Where is that in the Holy Scriptures? It's nowhere. That's not the word of Yah. Yahweh said, do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. So we don't follow stars and go and worship some baby born under a star. That's idolatry, foolishness, and wickedness. That's not when Yahweh told us to gather ourselves together. Another time you're to gather yourselves together here in the book of Leviticus, the 4th verse. These are the feasts of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons, meaning their appointed times. That means these times are ordered. They're set. You can't do them when you want to. You have to do them when Yahweh appointed them. Yahweh's the one that appointed them. Yahweh is the one that ordered them. Yahweh is the one that arranged them, purposed them, and determined them to come at this in that particular time. If you listen to your enemies on when those times are, you're guaranteed to not do it in his right time. For why would your enemies tell you the right time to go serve Yahweh? Why would your enemies tell you the right time to gather together among your people so you can know that it is Yahweh that does sanctify you? Your enemies will never do something that counterproductive to their own selves. But these are the feast of Yahweh, even holy gatherings, because that's what a convocation is. Even holy gatherings, which you shall proclaim in their seasons, in their appointed times, in their appointments, in their fixed times. Verse 5 says, in the 14th day of the first month at evening is Yahweh's Passover, Pesach. And this is when you are to go to Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, and sacrifice the Passover at evening on the 14th day, at the going down of the sun, in the season in which you came out of Egypt. Now, when did we come out of Egypt? And go look at what it says. Look at the law so you don't think I'm making this up. Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter. It says in Deuteronomy chapter 16, I'll start in verse 1. It says, observe the month of Abib. And what's Abib? It means green ears or green. Observe the month of green, Abib, and keep the Passover unto Yahweh thy Elohim. It doesn't say observe the month of Abib and make a New Year's resolution. It doesn't say observe the month of Abib and watch the ball drop. That's not why we're observing the month of Abib. He's letting us know to be aware of the month of Abib, because this is the time when we're to keep the Passover unto Yahweh, thy Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahweh thy Elohim brought you forth out of the land of Egypt. Which means what? Which means the month of Abib can't be in any other time but the time when we came out of Egypt. That's the only time it can be. So you can't do how the people in Islam do when it comes to Ramadan, for instance. And how do they do that? Because the Muslims, they follow a lunar calendar, which means their year will begin in any month of the year because they're following the moon. They have 12 months and they follow the moon. So it could be, so this year, the year can begin in what you call June, and next year it could begin in July, and the following year it could begin in January. And why? Because they're just following the moon. And you can't have your Abib begin according to the so-called Jewish calendar, because they have what you call a 13th month every 2 to 3 years, which means Abib 1 year will begin in what you would call the end of March, and then the following year it could begin in the end of April. Did we come out of Egypt a month apart from each other? It was at one time. That's when we came out of Egypt, in the month of Abib. And what is the month of Abib? If you go to the book of Exodus, the 12th chapter. Because if you're going to gather yourselves together, then why don't we do it according to the word of Yahweh? Why are we going to do it according to our own heart, when our own heart is what is deceitful? Our heart don't tell us the truth. Yah's word tells you the truth. So what does the word of Yahweh say when it comes to when is Abib? In Exodus, the 12th chapter. First, I want to go to the 13th chapter. It says in chapter 13, Exodus, we'll start in verse 1. It says, "And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever open up the womb among the children of YisraEL, both man and beast, it is mine." And Moshe said to the people, "Remember this day in which you came out of Egypt." Meaning you got to remember it. You got to put it to your mind. Don't forget it. Tell it to your sons and your sons' sons, so they may tell it to their sons and their sons' sons. But we forgot it. That's why we don't know when it is. But the scriptures tell you, remember this day, Moses said, in which you came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Just like the heathens, they got an Independence Day. It's called July 4th. It's July 4th every year. I don't care if they had a leap year that year when they had 366 days. It's still July 4th. There's a Spanish Independence Day called Cinco de Mayo, which means the 5th of May, every 5th of May, every year. But when is the month of Abib? And when is the day we came out of Egypt? When did Yahweh pass over our houses? He says, remember this day. You came out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day, not a month apart, not 2 weeks apart, not months upon months apart, but this day came ye out in the month of Abib. And when did this happen? Now go to Exodus, the 12th chapter. Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 reads, "And Yahweh spoke unto Aaron, Moses and Aaron, in the land of Egypt, saying," this month, what month? is the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. Speak thou to all the congregation of YisraEL, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household is too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of souls. And a number of souls, every man according to his eating, shall you make your count of the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Thou shalt take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And thou shalt keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation shall kill it in the evening. Because why? Because this is the 14th day of the month. And what did we do at the 14th day of the month at evening? We killed the Passover. And when did we do the Passover? In the month of Abib. And what is Abib? Green. Green ears. Meaning this is the month of green. And you would know the month of green because it's specific. It's something unique that happens every beginning of the year. I've watched it happen year after year after year. At one point, during the winter, all you'll see is brown and gray and brown. And then all of a sudden, green just starts popping out everywhere. Like almost overnight. And that's when the month of Abib is upon you. So we know it can't be next week, as many people are going to celebrate the month of Abib next week. Or that I should say a new year, because it's not the month of Abib, but they'll celebrate a new year. But in the month of Abib, you will be able to keep the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread and gather yourselves together. This is what Yahweh wanted us to do every year. But we chose to follow after the heathen and do something against what the Creator has spoken. Now, everyone wants to find out when is the right season. And the only reason we don't know the right season is because we've forgotten the words of Yah. So we have to return to the words of Yah so that we can do this in the right way. We could gather ourselves together according to his word. The month of Abib, if we just do what the instructions of the Almighty state, then we don't have to fuss and fight about the month of Abib. And what do the instructions state? In Zephaniah, we read the first 2 verses of the 2nd chapter of Zephaniah. But the 3rd verse says, seek ye Yahweh, all ye meek of the earth, which have worked his judgment. Seek meekness. Seek righteousness Seek meekness, meaning all we have to do is do what's right. Now, did Yahweh want us to gather ourselves together based on the doctrine, based on the teachings of our enemies? The answer is no, he did not. And since he didn't, then what's stopping us from ignoring them? What's stopping us from putting away our enemies' doctrine? Our enemies don't want us to gather together so that we may be sanctified in the Almighty. And who are the enemies? Who are the ones that want us away from the Almighty? Go to Psalms 83. I'll let the Almighty tell you. I'll let his word show you. I am not the author of these words, so don't come at me. This is the word of Yah. This is what he said. This is what he inspired his servants to speak. In Psalms 83, verse 1, keep not thou silence, O Elohim. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Elohim. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. You see, it says, thy enemies, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and have consulted against thine hidden ones. They, who? The enemies. Whose enemies? Yah's enemies. Who are they coming against? Yah's people. They have taken, they said, come, let us cut, sever, separate. Let us cut them off from being a nation. And you know you're not a nation when you call yourself black, Moor, Negro, colored, African and American, African, whatever, Afro this and Afro that. You're just a whole byword proverb that Yahweh didn't give you. He said, they said, let's cut them off from being a nation, that the name of YisraEL may be no more in remembrance. So Yahweh is warning you and letting you know there's enemies of him that have took aim at you so that you may no longer be connected to your nation or your name. He said, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee, against the Almighty. And who are they confederate against? Yahweh. And who are they taking target at? YisraEL. And who is doing it? The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, Jabal and Ammon, Amalek, and the Palestinians with the inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur also has joined with them, and they have holpen the children of Lot. Are you to tell me that the people that are really behind cutting you off are Ishmaelites, Islam, Edomites, the so-called Jewish, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Amalekites, the Philistines. And did you know that the Philistines are the descendants of Mizraim, the Egyptians? All these nations seem to be the nations trying to claim your land. Is that a mistake? That all these nations are the nations attempting to claim your land? Why do you think there's perpetual fighting in these places? Because they stole it. And Yahweh will not let them rest. He won't let the land rest. He won't let them rest until you're back in your land. But these are some of the enemies of the Most High. Let me show you another group of enemies. And why? So you know who not to follow. Now, does the Edomites, who call themselves Jewish today, does the Edomites, do they have doctrines that we follow? Sure they do. That's why people are celebrating Hanukkah. That's why people are keeping Rosh Hashanah, or what you would call the beginning of the year, in the 7th month. That's why people are keeping the Shabbat day in the evening. That's why people are keeping laws that aren't even in the scriptures, because they're following the doctrine of Edom. Are you keeping doctrines of the Ishmaelites? Sure. It's called the Quran. These are some major religions in the earth. But they're not the only enemies. If you look in the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter, we'll just start at verse 1. For Yahweh will have mercy upon Yaakov, and will yet choose YisraEL, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Yaakov. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of YisraEL shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. And they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall give you rest from your sorrow, and from your fear, and from the hard bondage wherein you were made to serve. That you shall take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how has the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Yahweh has broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hinders. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yes, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you were laid down, no woodsman has come up against us. Hell from beneath is moved for you to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you, all the chief ones of the earth. It has raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto you, have you also become weak as we? Have you become like unto us? Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of your viols. The worm is spread under you, and the worms cover you. How art thou fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the morning? How are you cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? Now, who is this? This is Babylon. For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's Babylon. That's why everything Babylon does, he's trying to mimic the Creator. And you in Babylon. Babylon is the name of the kingdom that's ruling the earth right now. That's what Yahweh called it. But let me show you. It's the fourth beast. This is this kingdom. Babylon. Are you following the doctrines that Babylon teaches? Sure you are. Should you? Of course not. And all you have to do is be aware of who it is so you can stop. Be aware of what thus saith Yahweh so you can do right. And in Daniel, the 7th chapter, it starts in verse 20. Oh no, we're going to start in verse 23 just to get right to it. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. Did you know the United States of America has over 700 military bases throughout the entire world? There ain't that many countries in the world, but they have military bases all over the world, ready to do its work wherever they're needed, because they're all over the world. The United States has done exactly as this fourth beast says. It said, this is the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And this is exactly what the fourth beast has done from its inception unto its pinnacle, which is right now. And in 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. and they shall be given unto his hand for a time and times and dividing of times. So, is the fourth beast teaching you doctrines today? And the answer is yes. All your folly days, all your history books, all your doctrines that you learn in these places is promoted by this kingdom. The word of Yahweh is teaching you to disregard your enemies. And if we're going to gather ourselves together, then we have to do it according to the word of Yahweh. Yahweh's word is clear. All we have to do is what he said in the book of Micah. And if anybody wants to call in these last minutes of our program, the number is 667-776-9394. 667-776-9394. If you want to call in, and if you have a question or if you want to make a comment about our program, in the book of Micah, to show you what we have to do. In Micah 6:8, it says, he has shown thee, O man, what is good. And what doth Yahweh require of you? But to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with thy Elohim. So the Most High, all he wants us to do is humble ourselves and keep his word. If we come together on these principles, then what can't we overcome? Yes, we have differences, but if we humble ourselves to the word of Yah, then put away the difference, because you're wrong. I'm wrong. You're wrong. Yahweh's right. Do what he say. That's all. Just do what he say. And maybe you are right. And maybe I'm right. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. But everybody can't be right if we have a difference of opinion. But only thing that's going to solve our difference is the word of Yah. But we have to be humble to his word and keep it. There don't needs to be no argument. Does Abib mean green or not? And then we can just do what thus saith Yah. No reason for a fight. No reason for a contest. Just do the word of the mighty Yah. Hallelujah. That's all. That's how we gather ourselves together, according to the word of Yahweh. Remember, next week we're having a special guest, the mighty Hebrew, coming on our program at 7 p.m. He's out of Tanzania, Africa, on the continent of Africa, the East African continent, Tanzania, the mighty Hebrew. And we're going to talk about, how do we gather ourselves together? How do we come together, even with our people in other parts of the world? Because it is time to gather ourselves together. Praise the mighty Yahweh. Next week, 7 p.m. Hallelujah. Well, until next week, until next time, we appreciate you listening and tuning in. And we hope that you continue to tune in. If you want more information, go to our website, House of YisraEL Philadelphia, or House of YisraEL Philly.org. That's House of YisraEL Philly.org. And you can go to our website and get all the information you need. We also have our YouTube and Facebook pages, all HOY Philly. Praise the mighty Yah. And if you want to get in contact with me, just go to our website, and our numbers are on there as well. Until next time, Yahweh loves you very much, and so do I. Praise the mighty Yah. Shalom, shalom.
Fourth trial. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Gather together, O nation not desired. Before the decree, go forth and Yah bringing his fire. Seek Yahweh, seek meekness. Walk in humility, not weakness. Yah's teaching us his ways to be higher. Learning truth, no more subject to the liars. Submit to Yah, the only way he'll unite us. Yah's way is holy, true judgment, and he righteous. We can front on Yah, not even in the slightest. Sons will be loud, be faking like they like us. But Yah gave us all to our heart's desires. He'll cut you off for spreading hate like a virus. So turn to Yah, he is torn as he will bind us. He is smited and he will heal us. After 2 days, yeah, he will revive us. In the 3rd day, in his sight, we will rise up. Let's go.
Gather your saints together. Bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice. Yah is life. Gather your saints together. Bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice. Yah is life.
Gather together, O nation not desired. Before the decree, go forth and Yah bringing his fire. Seek Yahweh, seek meekness. Do his judgments, walk in righteousness. Learn Yah's path, he will lighten it. While we fighting this, we the same blood, have the same Ima, in the same Abba. We all are slaves, live the same drama. My people, we be true brethren. 400 years have we learned a lesson. How good and pleasant if we dwell together. Yeah, 2 is better, 3 is hardly broken, and millions live forever. The enemy wanna cut us off to be a nation, never. But the shackles are severed. Soon we'll be one nation with one king, one law, all serving one Elohim.
Gather your saints together. Bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice. Yah is life. Gather your saints together. Bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice. Yah is life.
Gather together, O nation not desired. Gather together, let's gather together. Come on, gather together, O nation not desired. Gather together, let's gather together. Let's go. Gather together, O nation not desired. Gather together, let's gather together. Come on, gather together, O nation not desired. Gather together, let's gather together. Let's go.
Gather your saints together. Bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice. Yah is life. Gather your saints together. Bring them all together. Those that made a covenant to sacrifice. Yah is life.
Yeah.